Let's cover some traditional market action here as we do get prepared for a new week of new opportunities. And I am getting more involved in traditional markets myself. So I do want to kind of start a series now that focuses on Sunday leading up into the new week. And if you like this sort of thing, then I don't know, consider liking, subscribing. Anyways, we'll go over just the weekly and the higher term timeframes for NDX and of course SPX. Actually, we'll be looking at futures for both. And then we'll do a very quick synopsis of Bitcoin. I do want to let you know as well that of course we do have our sale going on for 20% off of any one of the programs or services in the link in the description below for Teachable with the code blacked in all capitals, BLACKED in all capital letters, and then the number 20, blacked 20 in other words. Anyways, let's start it off right here with traditional markets. So over the past week and a half to 2 weeks, many people are calling out a head and shoulders on both NASDAQ and SPY. They're very similar in chart behavior right here. Now, of course, as of last week, we did outline a very specific condition that while yes, a head and shoulders reversal pattern is a potential here, it is not activated just yet. And most importantly, most importantly, if either one of these indices can trade back above the prior Wednesday's high, which was this spike high right here at about 6,800 almost for SPY futures. And then of course on NASDAQ futures is about 25,300 or so. If you can even just see a spike above that number, then that is going to reverse the other way, and do not be looking for any sort of head and shoulders to be playing out because this is going to be some upside fun, baby. Anyways, as we get prepared for this new week, I do want to outline several other signals that are going to corroborate that story. We can see over here in the weekly time frame for NASDAQ, we do have hidden bullish divergence coming off of the lowest level of the RSI that we've seen since May of this year. So this is just a corrective move as far as I'm concerned. From top to bottom, it's also been quite, I would say, anemic. Or maybe not anemic is the right word here, but it's just it hasn't been that crazy. We're talking about I guess actually for NASDAQ, almost 10% drawdown. All right, fair enough. For NASDAQ, yes, but for SPY, it's about half that, I believe, somewhere around 5 or 6%. Yeah, let's go back over here. Yeah, just over 6%. And these are corrections down, I want to acknowledge, just to that yellow 21 EMA. So these are very technical corrections as they stand right now. We will go over what would essentially confirm a reversal later on, but for right now, I do want to focus on all of the signals that do kind of corroborate that story. Just make it super simple here. Anyways, yes, one hidden bullish divergence, which actually has been confirmed as of last Friday's closure for both. We also see that this is coming within the context of very low volatility. And generally speaking, when you are in a upside market in traditional markets, you expect the upside to occur on actually lowering volatility. At least that's the way that I was kind of brought up in traditional markets. For Bitcoin, it's a different thing. For parabolic blow off tops in markets, it's a different thing. But when you do get these sort of, low volatile moves into new all-time highs, it's generally a good sign, man. And when we just have a pullback down to that yellow 21 EMA, I look at this as a technical pullback. That's completely fine. And that was basically borne upon by the first closure below that red 5 EMA. So anytime you see something like that, yeah, it's potential for a bit of a correction. But ultimately, this is, in my opinion, a major opportunity right here. Or I don't necessarily know about a major opportunity. We'll go over what I'm doing in this situation, which is more or less just holding. But personally, for my sort of more, I guess it's not like macro accumulation, but just more active buying programs, I will buy any 10% move to the downside in traditional markets. And of course, even on a weekly basis, I will DCA a little bit, very small amount. But when I get that 10% move to the downside, then yeah, I'll go in a little bit deeper. And then of course, when we get my macro settings firing off, which we'll go over a little bit later for the LTI, then yeah, that's when I start to hammer that shit. But for right now, this is fine. This is all good. I don't have any major issues with this. And if I can get back to my notes over here, I do want to, where was it? Yeah, I also want to get over to the HPDR because the HPDR did reclaim the median as well. In fact, again, whenever the weekly median has been lost in the HPDR, you've almost always gotten a coast-to-coast sort of minimum correction down to the next 38.2 level. In this case, we can see the correction down to the 38.2 level was had, and now with NASDAQ closing back above the median, which was 25,000 bucks even, I'm looking for the other side to get tested. This is the old Bing and Bong. Fucking Bing has been hit, and now it's time for some Bong action. And Bong all the way up at around 25,800. I do think that that's a very likely move that we'll probably see this coming week. For SPY futures, I guess this one's actually already kind of played it out. So if it does want to extend the move a little bit more, 6,900 to 7,000 bucks. I mean, at this point, it's just new all-time highs, honestly. So yeah, don't want to get it any more complicated than this. And I want to keep this series super simplified because in traditional markets with long-term investing, it can be a little bit more simple, or at least you don't need to get into like the super nitty-gritty of all this shit. But anyways, I will show you what or at least what my program is doing over here for SPY futures. Obviously, I did not get a buy signal on this pullback. This is a macro buyer. I'm only looking to buy, major pullbacks, major drawdowns, and these are for very long-term holds. I'm talking about, I really don't even have plans to sell. Maybe I'll trade around these positions when I feel like a major top could be in. But as of right now, yeah, that's fine. We'll go over maybe one bearish indication a little bit later. But yeah, there's that code again for Black 20. We also got this on the Bitcoins, and you can use it on any sort of asset that's available on TradingView anyways. You just have to program it and attune it to that asset. Yes, I do share some of my settings for the LTI, which is on sale as well for the next week. Anyways, yeah, so that's there. Again, I don't have any major moves to make in here. Yes, I did buy a little bit on that pullback, but not a significant amount. So I will be very candid with what I'm doing here. And for better or worse, you can use that to some extent, to some value, hopefully. But again, understand my personal preferences here, which are very, 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 very long-term holds in Trish marks. I look at it as an asset to be accumulated over time, because that is how, at least in my opinion, the best way you can generate wealth over time, or at least one of the most easy ways, I would say. Easy, probably not the right word, but you know what I mean. Anyways, let's go over a couple of potential issues here, because I'd be remiss not to point them out. But on the monthly time frame, I do want to acknowledge that for at least NASDAQ, and we'll check on SPY in a moment. Whoops, just got away from it. We actually do see, if I put on my drawing tools, I got rid of it apparently. We actually do see this trend line regression that has been governing the high since 2018. So we're talking about January 2018. I'm gonna mark these off. So we'll do one right here. Boom. We'll do one again right here. This was in August of 2021. You already know where I'm fucking going with this one. And then again, connected with the high in October. And these have been in the past around, major highs. But of course, for the past two ones, while it was around a major high, keep in mind, this is a monthly time frame. So each and every one of these bars represents 1 month, or, about 30 days of price action. So between that signal between that trend line being fulfilled and then the next major high before a significant pullback, this one was 8 bars. This one over here was about 4 bars. And this one over here, who knows how long this one will take. But my point is that one, you will have divergence on that line if Bitcoin, or sorry, not Bitcoin, but if NASDAQ does not continue this next month. So what am I trying to say? NASDAQ and SPY must make new highs in December in order to work this off. If that happens, then just let it do what it's going to fucking do. If you don't see it make new highs within that time frame, I would say that this becomes a strong likelihood to get played out, and we will be looking at a bigger pullback. But again, is that it like today, tomorrow? No. I would say at least around the end of Q1 of this coming year, 2026, maybe even deeper than that. On the first one here, it took about another 8 months before you got the, a big correction. So yeah, just pointing that out. As a potential consideration for the future. And then also there's another super easy way to be getting bearish on traditional marks here. It's just if you trade back below last week's low, that's a real fucking problem. Or especially just wherever the 21 EMA is, which is more or less last week's low at about 24,250 for NASDAQ futures. For SPY futures, that same number would be about 65.75. So if you do see below there in the next week or especially next couple weeks, then okay, that's going to be a little more concerning. But for right now, I'm just looking up and to the right. And yeah, potentially we do see a major high in the next, 4 to 6 months, let's say. Anyways, I think I finally figured out how to use this fucking camera. Maybe, who knows? I don't fucking know. I'm not a technical expert in that way. But yeah, let's go over a very quick analysis of Bitcoin here too. Let me just make sure I hit all my notes. Okay, boom, boom, boom. Yep, we got that. All right, beautiful. So yeah, until those conditions happen, I'm just looking up and to the right, and potentially, a major high, unless if we see a new all-time high in December, probably like around the end of first quarter of 2026, maybe even later than that. Anyways, okay, cool. All right, moving on from there. Very quick analysis on Bitcoin here. Just want to go over the monthly MACD and also acknowledge that both SPY and NASDAQ futures to continue with their upside trajectory on the MACD. Bitcoin, however, is going to be getting its first cross to the downside. Keep in mind, CME has already closed for this month of November. Obviously, spot will close a little bit later tonight, but we can more or less assume that wherever CME closes, close is about where spot's going to be. And the reason why that is significant is because we are witnessing our first cross to the downside right here on the monthly MACD since this bull market began in 2023. If we go to Bitcoin spot, we can mark off all of the prior times we've seen the monthly MACD cross the downside. And if I put it on log scale right here, you'll notice that when the monthly MACD crossed the downside, the high for Bitcoin was in many months before the cross even happened, and you were in for around a 50 to 60% drawdown from that cross. Look, I'm not saying that that's guaranteed to happen right here, and it is a little bit strange to see traditional markets, pretty obviously bullish, and then Bitcoin, less so. So, if I'm going to be choosing the odd man out, who do I choose? Well, I typically will go with traditional markets. I mean, they usually are the more consistent ones, but hey, near the end of cycles, Bitcoin does deviate first. But anyways, as it stands right now, or at least on CME, I do want, hold on, that is not correct. Yeah, I do want to acknowledge on CME that not only did the MACD cross the downside, but this long-term trendline extension here from the price action pivots indicator was closed below. This does not mean that Bitcoin can't rally in December. It probably will. I think that there is more, there is a bigger rally at some point, higher than wherever it's gotten as of right now. But I do think that December will be quite tumultuous. I do think you're going to see some ebbs and flows. I think two things are going to be simultaneously true in December. I think you're going to see, a mid to low 80s tick, and I think you're also probably going to see a mid 90s tick, maybe even a little bit higher than that as well. But ultimately, I do think it's likely going to be range bound between those numbers. Like, let's just say mid 80s to mid 90s, something like that. Anyways, my point here is that, this is a tangible technical signal, and it has happened already on CME. If spot finishes today out, barring a pretty massive rally back above 97,450, then yeah, you will see this one cross the downside as well. And it's also going to confirm some bearish divergence here too. So, I just want to be sounding a little bit of these things. Like I said, even if Bitcoin has topped out, I don't think you're going to get a major move down in December. I don't think you're going to see significantly new lows than what we saw in November. I think it's going to be a ranging month, regardless of whether you're bullish or bearish, to be honest. But where would be my obvious area to be getting massively fucking bullish on Bitcoin, saying, hey, I don't give a fuck about any of these signals. I am bullish, baby, and give me that big old bull cock in my throat. I would have to say you got to see Bitcoin back above the 200 simple on the daily time frame at this point. That's likely going to align with the most recent price action pivot here at about 107,450, but it's not impossible. It's just it's very far away. So that would be my line in the sand. Until then, I treat all upside moves as bounces that are lower highs, because that is quite objectively what they would be. Anyways, moving on from there, from Bitcoin, let's go into some quantum wave bands. I just want to see what they've been doing as of recent. We've seen many of these trades actually in the past week actually be some pretty decent winners after some major losers. But at the end of the day, it is that beautiful up and to the right equity curve that keeps this thing consistent. And I think that we might have just seen the next higher low on that equity curve as this one does continue to trudge upwards and always. Actually in a long right now as well, that started about 91,000 bucks, almost up about $1,000 from that number. So it's been taking a lot of these quick scalps relatively recently in this past week, kind of building back, clawing back at some of those losses, which is natural to happen whenever you see a major reversal, which, Bitcoin's down more than 35% from the all-time high. So, I do think that that's a good sign for this strategy. Again, long-term, it's just playing with that edge long-term that is going to give those results. So if you are going to be playing something like this, I would highly suggest, and same thing with the quant prime surface as well, if you're more advanced, you probably already know this, just don't over leverage yourself. If you over leverage yourself, you're gonna ruin your trading equity. And the faster that you ruin your trading equity, the faster you get out of the game, and the faster that you don't get to live long enough to actually, see a beautiful equity curve like this. So yeah, and again, by the way, the quantum wave bands are also on sale. The code is blacked. It's blacked in all capitals and then number 20. The link is in the description below for Teachable, and you can get 20% off of any one of the programs or services in that link. Anyways, I think that's it for me. Again, just some signals to be aware of as we come into this new week. Ultimately, traditional markets still bullish, still looking up and to the right. I wouldn't even be surprised to see SPY futures maybe even test prior all-time highs or get close to it in this coming week. There There might be a short-term pullback down to 68, but that's not problematic in my book. Same thing for NASDAQ futures here too. Maybe a short-term pullback to 25,250, but ultimately I look for this one to try a little bit higher, probably this next week, maybe latest the week after that, to 25,900 or 26,000 bucks even. Anyways, other than that, I want to wish you the best as always. I'm gonna go back to setting up here. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully Monday for another live stream analysis, baby.